He keeps it a secret from everyone in town that his daughter became a zombie after the end of the world. Hello everyone. This is Jacobson and this is a short retelling of the 5th and 6th episodes of the 3rd season of the zombie series The Walking Dead. You can see the previous episodes at the links in the video description. Thank you so much for participating and for the 1000 subscribers. Hopefully we will keep it up and by the next video we will have 1100 subscribers. Once this video gets 100 likes, I will release the next installment. Enjoy watching it. The residents of Woodbury enjoy a midday barbecue while Andrea shares a cold drink with Milton. She fishes for details about the evening's planned events, but he says that mere words cannot adequately describe the festivities ahead. Meanwhile, the governor brushes a young girl's hair in his living room. When he accidentally tears a chunk from her scalp, we see that she's the governor's undead daughter Penny. "It's all right," he coos, gently stroking her head as she snarls. "Daddy still loves you." After restraining her and placing a cloth sack over her head, the governor glances out his window, where he notices Michonne glaring up at his room from the sidewalk. In the prison yard, Rick reels with grief over Laurie's death. Grabbing his axe, he strides into the cell block and begins slaughtering walkers. Herschel informs the group that the baby is healthy but requires formula in order to survive. Daryl and Maggie hop on the motorcycle to scavenge for supplies. Back in Woodbury, the governor leads the townspeople in a toast. "We've built a place we can call home," he says. "Today, we celebrate how far we've come." Andrea smiles as everyone cheers. As the party continues, Michonne sneaks into the governor's apartment to retrieve her katana. She rifles through his journal and discovers a list of names, the last of which, Penny, is underlined. She hears thumping in an adjacent room, but before she can investigate, the governor's unexpected return forces her to hide. She overhears Milton begging the governor to hold off the evening's event so he can run an experiment, but the governor refuses. Later, Michonne wanders into an industrial courtyard near Milton's lab, where she discovers a cage full of walkers. She releases the walkers and skillfully slaughters them. She's standing there smiling at the carnage when Tim, carrying a bucket of human appendages, catches her. Back at the distribution center, the governor admonishes Michonne but also praises her fearlessness, inviting her to join his research team. She makes a guess and confronts him about Penny. "You know about Penny?" he says. "Then you know I loved her." "Bet you say that about all the girls," Michonne replies. She snatches her katana out of his hands and holds him at sword point, before slipping out the front door. Afterwards, to Merle, the governor plays down the importance of what happened. He tells Merle that he will handle things and instructs Merle to go with the research team and retrieve more grist for the mill. In the prison yard, Axel and Oscar assist Glenn in digging 3 graves. "A third of our group in one day." Glenn mourns privately with Herschel. "Because of one asshole," Herschel adds. Glenn wonders if they should have killed off all the prisoners at first sight. Meanwhile, the governor informs Andrea that Michonne is frightening residents, and mentions the slaughtered walkers. When Andrea questions why he's keeping captive walkers, he says he has reasons but won't explain further. Andrea discovers Michonne, who is urgently packing their bags. Michonne insists that they should depart Woodbury. "No one who comes here leaves," Michonne notes. Andrea argues that Michonne has the wrong idea about Woodbury. Inside of the prison, Glenn follows a trail of dead walkers where he finds Rick standing in a daze. Glenn gently urges Rick to join them outside, but Rick slams Glenn against the wall and stalks off without a word. Milton, Merle, and the research team drive a tow truck to an off-site pit, where they hoist out a netted trap full of walkers. Merle taunts the walkers, then holds one down before pulling its teeth out with pliers. Elsewhere on the road, Daryl and Maggie locate an abandoned daycare center, where they scavenge for bottles and formula. Back in Woodbury, Andrea and Michonne approach the perimeter gate, bags in hand. Merle stops them and confers with the guard, then agrees to let them through. Andrea points to the open gate, where debris and garbage lays about, as proof that Michonne is being paranoid about Woodbury. "Are you coming or not?" Michonne asks, and then proceeds through the gate alone when Andrea is unsure about the offer. Later that evening, The governor consoles Andrea and proposes a drink and something to take her mind off losing her friend. She takes his hand and they stroll down the street. Back at the prison, Daryl and Maggie rush into the cell block with the baby supplies. Daryl cradles the baby and gives her a bottle. Carl suggests naming his sister after one of their group's deceased females, but can't decide from among all of the names. The group laughs at Daryl's alternate suggestion, Lil Ass Kicker, as a joke. Rick discovers the boiler room where Lori died, identifying it by the knife and birth fluids on the floor, and collapses to his knees. Lori's body is missing, but he follows a blood trail until he discovers a bloated walker that has consumed her entire corpse, and is in a stupor from having overeaten. He shoots the walker in the mouth, before repeatedly stabbing its full belly, crying out for Lori. That night, the governor escorts Andrea to the main event, a gladiator fight between Merle and Martinez, surrounded by chained walkers. Residents fill risers around the makeshift arena, cheering wildly. "What the hell is this?" Andrea asks, calling it barbaric and starting to leave. The governor privately reassures her that the fight is staged, with the walker's teeth removed, explaining that it helps residents blow off steam. The next morning, Daryl lays a Cherokee rose on Carol's grave. Rick, meanwhile, sits slumped on the floor of the boiler room, exhausted and numb. In his dazed mind, he distantly hears the baby wail, then suddenly the ringing of a nearby phone. Stunned, he picks it up and answers, "Hello?" Rick talks to the person on the phone. The person on the other line, a woman, says she will think about allowing Rick and his group to merge with hers. She then hangs up, prompting Rick to check on Carl and the others. Merle, Tim, Crowley, and Gargulio search the woods for Michonne. Michonne ambushes them, decapitating Crowley and impaling Tim. Walkers then approach them, and she makes her escape. Gargulio and Merle give chase after preventing their allies' reanimation. Andrea and the governor get to talking and Andrea tells him that she belongs on the wall as a lookout. He allows it, and Andrea is seen talking to Haley. They notice a walker and Haley attempts to shoot it with a bow, missing twice. Andrea hops the wall, killing it with a knife. Haley becomes irritated with Andrea, stating that people don't go over the wall. Andrea realizes that she enjoyed the arena fights from the previous night. Rick gets a call from a man from the woman's group. He begins to question Rick, including the means of Lori's death. Rick refuses to talk about it, and the man hangs up, causing Rick to break down. Rick then informs Herschel of the other group, but when Herschel picks the phone up, he hears only static. Herschel asks Rick if he wants to talk, but Rick declines the offer. Merle and Gargulio are ambushed once again by Michonne. She nearly kills Gargulio, whose skin is slashed, but is saved by Merle. Merle and Michonne then get into a scuffle, but are once again ambushed by walkers. Gargulio saves Merle by stabbing a walker that had cornered him, while Michonne scrambles away from a walker. In the process, she cuts its abdomen open, spilling its guts onto her. In the confusion, she escapes again, but this time with a bullet wound in the thigh from Merle. When Michonne is again accosted by walkers, they walk right past her as if she is not even there, which leads her to deduce that walker guts had created a sort of camouflage against the other walkers. After losing sight of Michonne, Merle suggests that they go back to Woodbury and inform the governor that they killed her, but Gargulio fears lying to the governor and advises that they continue the search. Merle then shoots him in the head, going back himself. Glenn and Maggie have made their way to town. Michonne sees them from behind a car and watches as they gather supplies, including a toy for the baby. Merle then sneaks up, and Glenn and Maggie raise their guns toward him. Merle recognizes Glenn and they have a conversation about each other's survival. Merle asks about Daryl and Glenn reveals that he's alive, which causes Merle to want to return to their camp along with Maggie and Glenn, but Glenn refuses, causing a scuffle. In the ensuing confusion, Merle grabs Maggie, holds his gun to her head, and orders Glenn to drive the three of them to Woodbury. Daryl, Carl, and Oscar are searching the lower levels of the prison. Daryl talks about his mother and how she had died in a house fire. Carl admits that he shot Lori in the head so she wouldn't turn. The two share condolences with each other. Eventually, the three come upon a walker. Daryl kills it, and notices Carol's knife in the side of its throat. Angered, He begins to stab the knife into the floor and wall. He slides down the wall and sits down. He notices a door budge and opens it, revealing a weakened, but alive, Carol inside. He carries her back to the others. Andrea and Philip talk about Andrea's behavior on the wall. Philip tells her that she's no longer suitable for the wall. She admits that she enjoyed the fights and was angered that she enjoyed them. Philip then alludes to her that she likes him as well. Later on, they enjoy a drink outside and the two end up sleeping together. Soon after this, Merle returns with Glenn and Maggie and informs the governor that Michonne is dead. When asked for her head and katana, Merle cannot produce them. Rick talks again on the phone and the woman on the other end tells him that she is Lori and that he was talking to the people who had died in the group previously, Amy, Jim, and Jackie, and Rick breaks down again, telling her how sorry he was for not telling her how he felt about her and allowing her to die. The connection breaks up and Rick hangs up, as he can no longer understand her. Feeling better after having his conversation with Lori, he walks out of the prison with the baby and the group, before handing it to Carl. Curious, he spots a figure carrying a basket and a bag along with a group of walkers. He approaches the fence and realizes that the figure is actually a survivor, Michonne, carrying her bag and the supplies that Glenn and Maggie had been forced to leave behind. The end of the 5th and 6th series. As soon as this video gets 100 likes and 20 comments, I'm releasing the sequel.